Welcome to Indiana Sports Beat Radio, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Know your role and shut your mouth, you jabroni!
Fires upfield into the end zone. It is caught. Jelani Woods, touchdown! INDY! A 43-point night for Tyrese Halliburton.
How do you like that, partner?
Renew now, drives in low, throws up a shot. It doesn't go. Tipped up and in by Anthony Leal. Indiana takes the lead.
It's pretty simple. I win. Google me.
Now, here's your host, Jim Coyle.
Hey, everybody. Welcome into another edition of Indiana Sports Beat Radio. A little quieter today. I'll be quite honest with you. I was thinking today was Saturday and was already off and running on my way to a basketball game, thinking that I was when I had someone reach out to me asking if we were doing a show today. I'm like, why would we be doing a show today? And it took a while for it all to come together then until I realized, oh my gosh, today is Friday. But that's what happens when you work 7 days a week. They all start to blend together, unfortunately. And such is the case, but oh well, we're going to make it happen. So we appreciate everybody being along with us. Hopefully we can still get everybody in today as far as the guests go. Todd Leary is set to join us, Zach Osterman. I'm going off the cuff right now. I'm completely off the charts here, so we apologize if this is a little hodgy-podgy today. All my good notes are at home. There's so much to talk about today that I had written down. And so hopefully we can still get through all of that, but looking forward to having Todd Leary join us. I know Indiana has there was another name that popped up, so if we can get on that. Tyler Smith is on the backside of things today. John is on assignment. Tyler, I noticed that there is a new name for Indiana fans. I don't know if you can join in or not, but a new name for Indiana fans to look at, a big that hit the portal. He has been kind of a nomad of sorts, but he's been to Tulsa, Oklahoma, and A&M before that for 2 years, and to Tulsa for 2 years, and then to Monmouth. But he looks like would be a kind of a terror under the basket. And some of the highlights I've seen, you see some of that, but his numbers don't quite say that, which is fine. Indiana doesn't need a massive presence there. They need a capable backup. But Tyler, I can't even think of his name right now.
Yeah, Nikita, and I'm trying to remember how to spell pronounce his last name.
I've got that down.
Konstantinovsky, I think.
Yep, there you go.
Good backup, big, 9 points, 8 boards. Not a 3-point shooter, but a really strong back to the basket player. Yeah,
and of course, the best, the more talented that you get, the better, of course. But a quality fill-in. I think Indiana, to be honest with you, I think they're starting to run out of options because you get down to these last 3 slots, guys know they're not going to see many minutes. At least the big and whatnot. And I think that would be a good thing for Indiana fans if they don't, because that means you're running more other types of offense, whether it be guard-oriented, wing-oriented, whatever the case may be, especially if Indiana can get into a position to where they're running 2 guards, 2 wings, and say Ballo, boy, that could be something. Interchanging Ballo and Renew, but they're kind of different type players. But we'll see how it all plays out. I know that Indiana fans are laying out how they'd like to see it go and who's going to do this and who's going to do that. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not diving into that because let's let them hit the hardwood together and play and get some minutes in. But we'll talk about that and plenty more. And again, my gosh, I wish I had my notes in front of me that I had prepared last night for the show. But that shows you how wacky it is. I prepared for the show all last night, and then for whatever reason was convinced I had to get up earlier than normal this morning to go drive up to a basketball game. That's this weekend. That's actually tomorrow. So my day is really, it's off and running, people. I can tell you that. But like I said, working 7 days a week, they start to run together. And that's exactly what happened. So glad that we're here. And hopefully we can get a hold of Todd, and we'll have him join us in the next segment. And Tyler, you're going to have to do a great job of keeping me on in segments now, because I'm really off time-wise, and I don't have a notepad in front of me. I'll run out in the first break and grab one to do that. And I just took my backpack in to get a zipper fixed yesterday, so all of my equipment was in basically a free think bag. So where I'm getting my backpack repaired. But speaking of which, I'm trying to remember, someone yesterday was asking about if Free Think does uniforms in like West Lafayette. It doesn't matter where you are. They've got you covered. Like I said, I know there's Dr. Joaquin, who has a dental office in Florida. If you have employees like that you uniform them, they've got you covered. So make sure you let me know. We'll get you taken care of, and I'll get you a code for a discount as well on what you guys get. But yeah, always try to support those who support us, like the Autograph app, where Unreal fans get Unreal rewards, and they monitor everything you do as far as where you're going on to these sites, and then you earn things, and they have unbelievably cheap points or cheap tickets that you can get through that. So go to the Autograph app as well, and you can just download that if you haven't already. You can just look it up, but you need to use the code link.ag.fan/ISB media. So yes, there you go. Perfect. Thank you very much. That is definitely one we wanted to talk about. Michael Penix getting drafted last night at the number 8 spot, a little higher than most people had thought. Going to the Atlanta Falcons, he's going to be a Falcon, and he's in a great situation because the plan for under Arthur Blank, the owner, said, hey, if he sits for 4 or 5 years, we're fine with that. That will not be the case, as their quarterback coming off of Achilles surgery, and he is supposed to be ready for the beginning of the season, but he will not last 4 to 5 years without question. But the fact that is their take, and they're not going to push him into action, that's a great thing for him. And they saw a quarterback that they liked, that they wanted, and they went and got him. So congratulations to Michael Penix Jr. Congratulations to Kalen DeBoer, who really built him up. So, and then of course there was who was going to be the number 1, Caleb Williams, and he did go number 1. And then there was Philip. Great. That is that's big. 6 quarterbacks in the top 12 picks. It really ebbs and flows with how that goes, but it's usually not been the case here of late. But man, oh man, they were a hot commodity last night. We'll see who works out best. Jaden Daniels from LSU goes number 2, and that's going to be the thing about Caleb Williams that I've heard a lot about here in the last week is that they're not sure what kind of a locker room guy he's going to be. He apparently, from sources close to the deal, we're talking GMs and teams, that he has this air about him. And I'll be honest with you, and just looking at some of his facial expressions during the draft last night, my looks dark. I could see that in his face, but man, it sucks not being able to be my normal loud self. Trying to keep this down is not fun. But Russell said the NFL owners seem confused. I'm not sure exactly what you mean by that. But Philip also said Bo Nix to Denver, McCarthy to the Vikings. Yeah, and I saw someone else say something that I agree with, that they're not sure that J.J. McCarthy is going to come into the league and be a star. And we'll find out. Chris How are you doing, my friend? We appreciate you immensely. Thanks a lot for joining us. You can always find us on YouTube if you are not in an area where we are on radio, and on YouTube, it's just youtube.com/Indiana Sports Beat Radio. But we're on in Fort Wayne on 1380 The Fan, Fort Wayne's only sports station. Also on 1230 AM, 104.7 FM, WJOB, the voice of the region. And down in Evansville on 97.7 ESPN, the Ref. Always the right call. Great to be on in all those locations, in addition to our incredible, loyal, and vast YouTube audience. So thanks to all you guys. 5 is on board today. Hope everybody is doing well. Probably need to go back up here to the top and make sure I didn't miss anything. Shout out to all you guys. Drew says maybe that one got that one-legged man who won the butt-kicking contest. I'm not sure who he was, but they are usually busy people. So you've got Luke Goody finishing up his visit to Indiana. And Indiana still with those 3 spots to fill, like I said. So a lot to get to. And when we get to the last segment, I forget what something pushed me into reading about the Little 5 yesterday. So I was reading up on it, the Little 500. And Tyler, make sure you keep ahead of me on when we got to get out for a break. But there's some amazing stuff written by Mr. Tesich. I think it's Steve Tesich, who is an IU graduate. Not only that, he rode was with the winning team in 1962. It's Breaking Away is based on his teammate Dave Blase, who rode 139 of the 200 laps for I think it was Kappa Alpha Psi. I can't remember exactly what team it was, but they were the winning team. But he rode mostly all of the laps, and he was into all the Italian stuff. What did the father on there call him? I forget. But there's some amazing stuff in there that I learned. And, all of the guys that were in that movie, Dennis Quaid, obviously a major star. Jackie Earle Haley is well known throughout Hollywood. Daniel Stern in the Home Alone movies. But Dennis Christopher, the guy who played, I can't think of the character name now, but the main character, the writer, I always thought, man, he never did anything. You never saw him again. And then I happened to see a listing for a credit that he was in Django Unchained. And as soon as I saw that, I went, oh my God, I knew instantly who he was in that movie. We'll talk more about that. But how are we on time there, Tyler, man?
We can take our first break, and then we've got Zach ready to go.
That'll be perfect. We'll do that. You're listening to Indiana Sports Beat Radio, brought to you by the Autograph app and AndyMoreHonda.com. We'll be back with more right after this. Let me know when it's been 3 minutes, Tyler, please. Zach, we are all jacked up today. I am, at least. I got up early and took off thinking it was Saturday, headed to a basketball game. And finally, after a phone call, so you doing a show? I'm like, why would I be doing a show today? And then finally it was, you know what? The expletives were flying because I had to pull over. I'm in McDonald's right now. So a great start to my day.
Been there. Been there, sorry.
Yeah, well, 7-day-a-week deals they all just keep turning into one. All right, so this is going to be the 910 Murray, no, the 850 Murray. You do 950 question mark. We're jacked up on time, like I said. How have you been, man?
Good, you?
Just running like a jackal. Here I was. I thought I was finally. I'm like, I'm getting out. I'm on time. I've got time to get there, and this really just it does it. That sure sets it off. Actually, I was just talking about Little Five yesterday. I got reading about I forget what Steve Tasich, the writer. Just learning more about him and
Steve, I think, was team manager. I'd have to go back and ask.
I think
that's the team
an alternate.
That's the team I help coach now. Five.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Oh my God. Yeah. He said he was. I read it was that he said he was an alternate writer, which probably means he was the manager.
Yeah.
Since he was in school.
But yeah. No. The
30 seconds.
The character is based on
Dave Blaze or Blaz.
Dave Blaze and Rob Stoller were his two teammates that he based the character on. A lot of it was based on Blaze, who still comes around to the race. Actually, I've been curious what he was doing. He got hit by a bike trying to cross the track on race day, but I think he made it through the race okay. So, but yeah.
So that's where Dave Stoller came from. Aha.
5 seconds. Here we go.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio, here on this Friday, a freaky Friday, as Zach Osterman joins us, and I'm live from a McDonald's in parts unknown, as the Saturday turned out to be Friday. So here we go, but we'll get through it. Hope everyone's having a great day. Zach Osterman from the Indy Star, and Zach, of course, the biggest thing that everybody is looking at right now is still Indiana filling out their basketball schedule, although last night the draft, we'll talk about that a little bit, but 3 open spots remaining. Luke Goody on a visit to Indiana now, and then we've seen that they are talking to yet another big man from Kiev, Ukraine, that has been an experienced 6'10" center. He's played 4 years already. Had a redshirt year, so this dude is he's experienced. But that's probably all Indiana really needs at that spot. Someone you can just count on, and filling those other 2 spots is all gravy. Because if you get someone like a Luke Goody, if you have that coming off the bench, that is an incredible upgrade just across the board for Indiana.
Yeah, I mean, this is I guess part of the rhythm, for lack of a better term, of the portal is, if you are going to really kind of do wholesale work in it, then there's going to be a time where, sort of your net is a lot wider, where your options are greater. You maybe you can say, well, we want this kind of player or this kind of player, but for example, I mean, just to use it as a hypothetical, if you had a Kalel Ware type center in the portal this window as opposed to last window, Indiana could at one point in time, in theory, look at Umar Ballo and this sort of hypothetical 2024 Kalel Ware and say, well, we could take either one. They're different kinds of 5s, but we just have a need for a 5, and then we can build around the strengths of whichever player we get. But as you start to fill the big spots and take the key pieces, your needs start to shrink. Your opportunities also start to shrink. Not a lot of guys go into the portal to play off the bench or, to be reserves. And so you just naturally kind of start to kind of filter down to a more refined set of criteria. I think you're right that the needs you outline there, a knockdown 3-point shooter, some sort of, I don't know if you would say established, but at least like veteran post depth. Those are probably the two big things this roster still needs. Would you keep that third scholarship? Would you have a use for it or not? Or 13th, I should say. Would you have a use for it or not? We'll see. But this is kind of the point in the portal where you've got to be a little more refined and probably to some extent be a little bit more sort of willing to compromise on okay, this guy's just going to be a reserve for us, so if he doesn't tick every single box that's okay. I think you're talking about, if I'm pronouncing his last name correctly, Nikita Konstantinovsky, I believe is how that's pronounced.
That's how I've been saying it.
From Monmouth. He played 2 years at Tulsa, and he was at Monmouth last season. Monmouth obviously is at a much lower level. It's in the Coastal Athletic Association. But he was one of the best rebounders in his conference last season. The other elements of his profile are fairly straightforward. But if you're Indiana, if he's interested, you've got already Renew and Ballo. You've got, especially if you can get Luke Goody or a player like him, you've got the ability to, play smaller. If you want to go with kind of 2 wings rather than 2 bigs, which I think we'll see a little bit more of from Indiana next season. So you don't need, you don't need to move the heaven and earth with, the 12th scholarship on your roster. You just need to make sure you've got adequate depth, and I think that's where Indiana is probably focusing now.
Yeah, a huge difference between not having that spot filled last year and this year because of that depth. And it is truly deep. We talked about them having depth last year, but they weren't. They are potentially going to be a player at every roster spot is going to be someone who can step onto the floor and play. And that's not always the case for most teams. But that could be the case because basically Indiana, not only did they have an open scholarship last year, you did not have from Georgia, Ja'Kai Newton. So basically you had 2 open spots, and so and they have really filled that back in. So depth should not be an issue. You want to make sure you have everything in place, though, to have the best competition you can have, because that's something else I don't think they got last year with guys pushing guys enough. And so that would be an upgrade for them. And you've got to give credit to the Indiana staff for going out and getting and landing guys that they needed. Mike Woodson, you got to give him credit for whatever reason, recognizing, hey, we've got to do things a little differently than we did last year. It wasn't as successful as they probably would have liked for it been, but this year has been a completely different case.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think what you wanted to see from Indiana is this kind of decisiveness, and there was a lot of talk about, not least from me, I should say, in terms of, enhanced NIL resources and greater opportunities and things like that. The flip side to Indiana's struggles last season was always going to be that there's, a lot of room for playing time and for sort of competitive players to come in and command minutes. This is also just a team that lost a couple starters off last year's roster, lost a point guard, lost a pretty high usage center. So guys were always going to look at Indiana and sort of see, I guess, opportunities there. But if you were Indiana, with sort of this promise of greater NIL resources and this idea that, Mike Woodson was kind of basically that Indiana was almost going to kind of double down on Mike Woodson. You wanted to see, clear thought process. You want to see results. And listen, all of this is still just on paper. And until Woodson and his staff put all of this together in a more sort of coherent way, and they can't for a long time, that'll start in the summer when all these guys get to campus together. But until then, we like I said, this is all still just kind of happening on paper. But, at the risk of sort of moving into the neighborhood of cliches like win the transfer portal, this is what you wanted to see from Woodson and his staff. And if they get Luke Goody, who's on his visit now, my understanding is he arrived last night, and I think the bulk of the visit is supposed to take place today. Then that just kind of, that only kind of bolsters their case for the idea that they were prepared, they were decisive, and they went out and got guys. It should be said, Ballow's only got 1 year left. Goody's technically only got 1 year left. There's 1 year where he only played 10 games, but the flip side is a bunch of those games I think came in the back half of the season, which is you're not supposed to be able to get a season back if you play games in the latter half of the season. The flip side is there are kind of no rules on that sort of thing anymore. So we'll see if anybody really wants to challenge that. If Goody does come in, if he does come to Indiana, and at some point down the line, Indiana wants to try and ask for that extra year. But Rice and Carlisle are, both, either they come in and they're NBA ready and they're only here for a year because they played so well, and then Indiana reaps the fruits of that, or you've got multiple years with those guys. So you're not just, grabbing, kind of grabbing at the portal without a plan. There is some strategy to it, some vision to it, et cetera. And, I think there's plenty of reason to believe that this is going to shape into a good team, a useful team for Indiana.
Yeah, and not only that, besides all the action in the portal, we saw Mike Woodson and the entire staff out in abundance this week on Tuesday, making visits to Trent Sisley, Jalen Harrelson, and Braylon Mullins all on the same day. Of course, three of the probably most prized recruits in the state for next year. Certainly three of them, if not the three top recruits, and Indiana would like to have all three of them, all different type players, but all very good players. Trent Sisley had visits from Purdue on Monday, Indiana on Tuesday, Micah Shrewsbury on Wednesday, and then on Thursday, Louisville, he gets a scholarship offer from Louisville. So he's a wanted man down in southern Indiana. But this class wasn't that great, and they were able to kind of skip over it. I know Indiana fans would like to see guys on that roster from Indiana, and this will give Woodson and his staff the first time to kind of get that going with a blend of some kids from Indiana, and you're going to have to remain very, very portal bound.
Yeah, I mean, I think, and listen, obviously there is this class specifically in 25, Mullins, Sisley, Harrelson. I know there's been a lot of sort of connection to Malachi Moreno from Kentucky, who, obviously not an in-state player, but some of those relationships not far away, et cetera. So there's part of it that is just sort of like, hey, there's good players in this class. You need to be in the room with some of those guys. And if you're not convinced about every one of them, that's fine. But, as you mentioned, the whole staff out on the road this week, I think tells you maybe where Indiana is with, at least those three in-state guys, Sisley, Mullins, Harrelson. The other part of this is you can't, it's not just that it's not sustainable to be trying to take 5-6 transfers every year, though it's probably not. It's also that, when we talk about getting to where Indiana is right now, where, let's say they take Luke Goody or someone like him, a guard wing, knockdown 3-point shooter, a really good catch and shoot player. Well, then you got 2 scholarships open, but the problem is you don't have a lot of you don't have a lot of minutes to go around. And most kids, most guys don't go into the portal to sit on the bench. And sometimes you'll be able to get a guy from maybe a low mid-major situation who would just like to spend one more year of college, playing at a Big Ten level or whatever. But the point is, most players go into the portal looking for, more, not less. And if you are so portal dependent all the time in your roster construction, eventually one of the diminishing returns I think you'll see is struggling to fill out your roster with quality players, because quality players at a certain point will look at your roster and say, there's just not room for me. I can sit here and rough out a 9, even a 10-man rotation, and I'm not in it. Or I'm at, I'd be number 10 or that sort of thing. But if this is where that blend of high school and portal recruiting is important. If you get to a place where, maybe you're looking for 2 or 3 impact players in the portal every year, maybe 4, but then you've also got a roster that is stocked with guys that are bought in, that are there to develop, that maybe are okay. Hey, maybe I won't play as much my freshman year, but I will, build upward from here. That's where I think it gets more, that's probably more the target, I guess, in terms of the balance of high school recruiting and player development, and portal recruiting and player development, and roster construction, and, sort of rotation construction. So, a bit of 2025 is specific to that class and all the in-state kids in that class. But a little bit of it, for me anyway, is that you really just need to be able to fill your roster out with guys that, even if they don't have to stay for 4 years, that they're going to come in, they're going to be comfortable with maybe a more limited role early on while they develop, and then they'll grow into something as time goes on. And I think you're a lot more likely to find those players at the high school level, I think.
Absolutely. And it'll be something that Indiana fans want to see. But also I look at guys like Trent Sisley, who is a very wanted player, but he's also a guy, though, that is probably going to be on your roster for a minimum of 3 years, unless he were to transfer someplace, or had this unbelievable run and really just grew as far as his game much faster than one would think. So you're looking at having a guy potentially on your roster for 3 and 4 years, which is a blue herring. That doesn't happen anymore unless you're at, say, Purdue. And that would be a great thing for Indiana to have. And something that that you can start, because Woody's been off balance, not himself, but I mean roster wise, since he got here, because it was kind of set with what they had, and then they went a certain way. You still had Trey Jackson Davis, and then last year didn't plan things as well as they probably should have, but this year make a great rebound and learn from that. But now can get to that point to where you're getting the kind of guys that you need, but also I think you're showing, maybe that's why, I don't know why, but Liam Neely decommitted. He didn't know that they were going to be able to put something like this together. He didn't, none of us saw this because it hadn't happened yet. And based on past performance, it didn't happen that way. Maybe he doesn't decommit if he waits a little longer, who knows? But for whatever reason, Indiana is able to go out and put together what should be a much more competitive team this year.
Yeah, I mean, again, though, I think to your point, too, it's, when you do need to sell that longer-term vision, and I recognize long-term in college basketball isn't what it used to be with NIL and the portal, and it's always been a bit of a transient sport in the sense that, you're unlike baseball, unlike football, your stars don't have to spend more than, 10 months on campus, 9 months on campus. before maybe they've proven themselves enough to be able to go into the NBA. But in the same breath, you know, and again, I'm not saying this is what happened with Liam McNeely, but to your wider point about just sort of planning and construction, if you are trying to do this in the portal every single year, then there's not really like a bigger picture to sell to guys to say, you know, trust me, just wait until April and you'll see what the roster looks like. Essentially, the flip side is, you know, Kalel Ware is a great example of a player that you can sell in the portal and you can say, hey, listen, this is what we're capable of doing with elite level talent. We got him in the first round. You can look at Jalen Hood-Schifino, who they got out of high school, and you can say we got him in the first round. So there's always, like, balance is always important, but it is about having balance and not being so lopsided in one direction or the other, at least for me. And listen, you know, we all followed Matt Painter around throughout March, and we asked him in different ways, you know, how'd you do this? You know, you are a lot less sort of portal reliant than basically any other coach in the country. How did you build this roster, this chemistry, this togetherness, et cetera? And so it can be done. The flip side is we were all asking Matt Painter those questions because nobody else has really done it. So you don't want to go too far in one direction where, you know, you are just in the portal, living in the portal. That is your plan for roster construction year on year on year, because eventually I do think that volatility leads to negative return. But on the other hand, you know, for the vast majority of coaches and the vast majority of programs, you do have to have a plan that balances both. And you do have to be comfortable with the idea you're going to lose a guy you don't expect, you know, every once in a while, and you're going to have a hole you don't expect every once in a while, and some guys are going to transfer that you don't necessarily think will transfer, and you've got to be able, you know, to be nimble to that. And so it's kind of one of those where, you know, listen, last year, what happened last year to Indiana, I mean, that was an uncommonly large sort of talent drain. If you think about losing 4 starters and all the minutes and all the points and everything else. And let's be really fair. And I've said this before, and I'll say it again. Last season was not up to par for Indiana, but it wasn't the unmitigated disaster that people sort of wanted in the moment to paint it. You know, Mike Neislich, my colleague over at the Herald Times, remarked during the Big Ten tournament that Michigan had the season Indiana fans think they had. You know, you want to see unmitigated disaster. Look at what happened to Michigan. Indiana was not good enough last year by any means, but Indiana still won 19 games, went 500 in the conference. There are far worse outcomes. And so you can accept that kind of season every once in a while, but you've got to make sure that you have the reaction to it that Indiana has here, not just in terms of the portal and building, you know, rebuilding this roster through the portal, but to your point, also doubling down in the high school class and saying, okay, we're not going to leave ourselves in a situation potentially. I mean, these guys have got to commit, but potentially leave ourselves in a situation where, you know, we don't, you know, we sign nobody out of high school. And so there's no sort of natural plan of succession, if that makes sense. No natural, like, long-term development. So, I mean, it's not easy. You know, it's always tempting with the portal. Coaches like experienced guys, and you never know who's going to enter, right? I mean, you never know when you're going to land, you know, Dalton Connect, or from Indiana's perspective, even Kalel Ware. But it's about trying to find the right balance. And as ever, it's also about, you know, good evaluations, good relationships, and just making stuff fit. You know, that will never change.
Absolutely. Zach Osterman from Indy Star. I can't thank you enough, brother, as always.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. Good luck with the roving show today.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate you. Hey, we've got more coming up here at Indiana Sports Beat Radio, and that means the Todd father, Todd Leary, is coming up next to join us. And looking forward to that as we'll take more of your questions and talk more about what has gone on in the portal and what Indiana has been able to get accomplished and what that might mean for next year's squad. Looking forward to that. Brought to you, of course, by the Chop Shop, your butcher, baker, and whatever you need, all in one spot. Dine in, carry out, or have them cater your next event. We're back with more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with the Todd father, Todd Leary, right after this. Oh boy, has this been a great day for me.
I want to know what you're partying with on Thursdays now, apparently.
No, dude, I was all prepared for today's show. All my notes written out with my notepad. It was great. I had some great stuff too. And then I'm also at the same time, I'm planning for this weekend because there's an AAU event in Indianapolis. And so I'm getting all that. So all that's in my head. And then whatever reason, when I went to bed, that was the last thing in my mind. And so I set my alarm earlier and buddy, I was gone. I was on the road and someone, thank gosh, called me and said, are you not doing a show today? And I'm like, why would I do a show today? Because I'm thinking it's Saturday.
Right.
And I get off and then finally it dawned on me and I'm like, wait, what? Friday? And I'm like, are you kidding me? Oh, so I was not happy to say the least. You had it
in your brain yesterday because you texted me.
Oh, trust me, I know. I mean, right up until it, man.
Yeah, I got you.
7 days a week. It doesn't stop. And now they've there are no days anymore.
Nope.
Every day that ends in Y.
Yep.
Well, I guess I can plan for tomorrow a little better now.
Which tournament you going to in Indy?
It's Jam Fest. It's what Indy Elite's playing in it. That has Trent Sisley, Malachi Moreno, the big kid from Kentucky, Braylon Mullins, Desmond Briscoe, and they've got some other guys on there as well. But yeah, it was a busy week for those guys out getting visits. Sisley met with everybody except for Donald Trump and Joe Biden, I think, giving equal time there
to both parties.
30 seconds, guys.
You ain't far off, 5. Yes, it is. Thanks, Bill.
On 5.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio here today. A little mobile action, and if you're just joining us, Jim thought Friday was Saturday and was on the road heading to a game somewhere already, but thank goodness we always have the equipment. So welcome to Indiana Sports Beat Radio. And Todd Leary, the Todd father, brought to you by myjumpshot.com. If you know of anybody, have kids, have grandkids, have anybody, or maybe it's you that needs to work on that jump shot, go to myjumpshot.com and get it done because that's what it takes. And there are lots of people that are doing that, whether it's I've had fathers call me of kids that are well known that you would know who they are. Like Xavier Robinson is one, to give you an example. Of course, he's a Lawrence Norther. He's a northerner like our man Todd Leary. But Todd, how's it going, brother?
Great. Excited.
I assume your day started off better than mine.
Yeah, I mean, probably pretty similar. Although I did know what day it was, but
That was the key.
I'm
was
ahead
my
of you a little bit.
Yeah. Oh man, it's been a busy week for Indiana basketball. Of course, they landed just a lot of guys, and they had 7 spots to fill, and so they filled 4 of them. And I think that the players they picked up have really added not only depth but athletic ability, probably speed. It's going to alter the offense in a good way. You're going to have more options depending on what else they're able to add to this. It's going to be dependent upon Ja'Kai Newton. Can they get something from him? Bryson Tucker, is he going to be able to come in and do something? And so it's going to be interesting, and I'm sure. But from your standpoint, you have a much better view on it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a similar view. Like we're all kind of guessing as to how these pieces are going to fit together, and I do think that I don't think this portal era, the way that it is sustainable long term, but I think it is what it is right now, and you have to try to navigate your way through it as much as possible and get as many talented players as you can get. Probably the biggest thing I'm worried about right now is with this Indiana team, like the struggle over the last couple of seasons has been shooting. And I'm not going to say these guys coming in are not going to fix that problem. I think they'll help it. But I'm not sold yet on the fact that this team is going to not be last in free throw shooting and jump shooting again. And that
they're going to have to work on. They're going to have to get better than they have been as far as shooting. These guys. Well, no, I'm talking about the guys that are coming in. They're probably going to have to do better than what they have coming in. I know a lot of people have said that Keenan Carlisle, well, he shot 40% on spot up shooting. I'm like, well, that's great if you can get open threes. That's wonderful. But the defense is not going to plan to do that. And I'm not, and then of course Miles Rice is a freshman, so he should get better. You would hope so. But is the offense? We have not seen one that has been real conducive to producing 3-point shots. That is going to be a question, I guess, for this team now.
Yeah, and I don't think it's a secret, or I don't think that we figured out anything that isn't obvious, and that right now Mike Woodson is not making the 3-point shot, the focal point of their offense. And so I don't think that's necessarily going to change. I don't think all of a sudden, they're going to try to be a team that leads the Big Ten in 3-point shooting. But you can't be last. You can't finish where this team wants to and expects to on a yearly basis finish and be last in any of those offensive categories. And so, that has to be something that changes. And I know Zach was just using them as an example, but when Zach Osterman a few minutes ago in commenting about, Indiana, comparing Indiana and Michigan's, seasons last year. Well, since when do we compare ourselves to the last place team in the league? Like, that's not who we want to be compared to. And I'm not blaming him. I get what he's saying. I understood his point. I agree with his point. But let's stop using that as as long as we're not the worst, coaching situation in the league, like we're fine, like that. And trust me, like, I'm not trying to be Johnny negative. I get as excited as everyone does when we go in the portal and get new guys. I like the portal era. I think it's going to have to be adjusted because I don't think you're going to be able to let guys just jump schools every single season. But it is what it is right now. And for what Indiana, for where they were, prior to the portal opening up to where they are right now, I mean, you've got to feel good about it. I know the coaching staff feels pretty good about where they're at. It's just, I don't think this is sustainable year in and year out. And this team right now is going to have to come in and play a lot better than, what we think they are capable of right now. They're going to need to surprise us. Like you said, Ja'Kai Newton. we don't know what to expect out of him. He's going to need to surprise us. He's going to need to, this team's going to need to do stuff better than what they've done it in the past.
Without question. And so is the coaching staff. And I'm not saying that to be negative. I'm just saying
totally agree.
That we've seen how they've done it. And it's fine when you have certain talent, but when the talent adjusts, you have to adjust. And this should not be a team that is led through the middle. Ballo is a solid piece to get in the middle, but he's a 12 points a game kind of guy, which is solid, but it's not Zach Edey or, it's not Trace Jackson Davis. So you need to spread that around, and the 3-point shot is where the differences should come.
Yeah, it should. Like the easiest thing to do is improve the thing that you're the worst at. And so Indiana was really good on points in the paint last year. It's going to be hard to match that in this coming season. But I'm sure they'll be pretty close to it. I'm sure they're not trying to match their free throw shooting and their 3-point shooting from last season. I'm sure they're trying to improve on it. And the biggest margin of error or improvement that they can show is obviously in shooting the basketball. And I mean, I know it. I say this all the time, and I'm just going to keep saying it until I die. And that basketball is simple. It's not easy. Don't misunderstand what I'm saying. It's not easy, but it's simple. Like what you're trying to accomplish is simple. And finding guys that can put the ball in the basket, it is really a major key. There's not, in today's world, like 15 years from now, the game might change again and be where it's a defensive game again. But right now it's an offensive game. And we at Indiana University have a coach that is not stressing offense the way that a lot of other teams are. And that makes it difficult for you to beat those teams. And we're not trying to beat the Michigans of the world. We're trying to beat and Michigan might be different now with Dusty May there. Like they might have a different situation, but the Michigans of last year, we're not trying to beat them. Like we're trying to beat the Purdues and the Illinois of the world.
And not only that, I mean, just look at the Final Four. You had Purdue, who was the number 1 3-point shooting team in the country, even though that Zach Edey really throws that over the top. But then you've got Alabama, who is a 3-point shooting led offense. UConn, also guard-oriented offense. North Carolina State was kind of an anomaly just because they had that run, but still, you just see this is how it is right now, and this is how the offense is, and you've got to get on board because otherwise you're playing checkers against chess.
If defense and toughness, defensive toughness and all that, pretty much got you to the Final Four every year, Houston would make it to the Final Four every year. But they're kind of the perfect example of why or how basketball has changed in college. And it's an offensive game now. And the best defensive team in the country, the team nobody wanted to play against from a defensive perspective, was Houston. And, that was the same situation last year. And they didn't get to the Final Four either year. Did they have great seasons? Yes. Are they very tough to play against? Yes. Can they win 6 games in the NCAA tournament without being one of the better offensive teams in the country? No, they've proven that. And I just want this Indiana team to be kind of a hybrid of both. I know they're not going to be Alabama. They're not going to lead the country in 3-point shooting. They just can't be last. Like you can't be in that bottom tier category of an offensive statistic and be successful in today's college basketball world. So I'm hoping that they understand that and make it a focal point of developing these guys when they get there.
Yeah, and I hate using Bob Knight as an example because I don't want to be, Bob Knight. That's not what I'm saying. But the offense that he ran, that was, his offense, it wasn't geared towards 3-point shooting, but it sure got a lot of them off.
Right.
I tell people all the time, I go, right now, people, 5 of the top 11 all-time 3-point shooters for Indiana were on the same roster, the roster that you were on. You're in that group of 5. Same roster. And so that was not an offense built to produce three-point shooting, but it did because you guys had shooters. They took the shots when they were created.
Yeah, and we, that those teams were a little bit different in that we were very everyone was, I'll say, less athletic and more skilled. More basketball skilled and fundamentally skilled.
Better IQ, better basketball
we
IQ.
didn't have the athleticism that these guys have, that's for sure. But that team was just built differently. And when you look at, that's why I use Purdue as an example a lot, because Indiana fans watched a lot of Purdue, but UConn is probably the biggest example. They run a hybrid version of motion offense and today's, ball screen college basketball world, in that they a lot of the reason one of the reasons they were very tough to defend was because they reacted and read what the defense did, and their offense, their cuts, the way they moved the ball kind of reacted to / dictated that. And when a team would go under a screen, guys would react to it. And that's not the way, that's not the way Indiana basketball has worked over the last, 5 or 6 years, even back to Trace Jackson Davis's teams when they were playing well. Like they were not motion offense-ish type teams. Like they were running sets. This is where you're supposed to go. The ball, everybody knew the ball was supposed to end up in Trace Jackson Davis's hands, and last year was supposed to end up in Malik Renew or Khalil Ware's hands. And so, in our teams back in those days that you refer to, like truly, I know Calvert is still the all-time leading scorer in the Big Ten, but honestly, we didn't run a lot of stuff for Calvert. Like Calvert was just the best reader of defenses there was, and when he got open, he made the shots. And we didn't really have, like, I can tell you, there was never a time, even though I didn't shoot very much, or even though like Pat Graham didn't shoot very much, we were never told not to shoot. Like you were always, green lighted, I guess what you would say. If you shot too much, maybe they might say something to you, but that didn't ever happen. I mean, very rarely ever happened. And so, we ran stuff to where when you reacted to the defense, like you got yourself open. And the same thing can happen with these guys. UConn didn't run a lot of stuff. They didn't even have that many really good three-point shooters last year. But the stuff they ran got guys open for open shots, and they were capable of making them. And so, outside of, I guess, Cam Spencer, they didn't even really have a knockdown three-point shooter. Caravan is supposed to be, but sometimes he would go games and shoot 2 or 3 times total for the game. So they're a team that just adjusted to college basketball, and I think that's what Indiana's got to do. Not just with the roster, but with the style of play has to adjust a little bit to the new college basketball.
Absolutely. And Luke Goody is on a visit now, the kid from Homestead originally that ended up going to Illinois after not getting an offer from Indiana. A pretty good three-point shooter. He looks like one of your old-fashioned shooters. Someone asked earlier, what do you think about his shot? And you've seen him play over the last 4 years.
Yeah, and I even go back to high school. I saw him play in high school, and he is a very fundamentally sound, good shooter. I think he would be in the tops of the country as a three-point shooter if he was able to be a volume shooter. He at Illinois, he had a very certain role, and they were a very specific type of team that was kind of more up and down athletic. He was a guy that worked himself onto the floor because he made a bunch of good plays. He makes the right play. He makes shots when he's open. Like, he is a definite addition to your team that would make you better. And I'll tell you, when you bring a guy like that in, he's going to be in the right place. Like, I'm going to compare him to this, and this, I hope this doesn't come across as negative, because I'm not trying to make a negative comment about someone else, but I mean, he's kind of an upgraded version of Miller Kopp. Like, I think he's a better shooter than Miller Kopp. Miller Kopp was deemed a good shooter, but his percentages, he never really was that consistent of a good shooter. But Luke Goody is. Like, he's a more consistent will shoot a good percentage. And if you can get him volume shots, he can be kind of a surprise, I think, in the portal this year, where people are not going to be overly excited about him because he's not incredibly athletic, but he's going to be hard to keep off the floor. Long story short, and everything I've just long-winded said, he would be tough to keep off the floor if you get him to Indiana. That's a dude who, he's Trey Galloway, but a better shooter. And he makes those same good plays as Trey Galloway.
Yeah, and to be able to have that on the bench, you're probably going to have Trey Galloway on the bench.
We keep saying that year in and year out, and it doesn't seem to happen. I agree. I understand. I agree with you. We thought that last year too, but he ended up some games being, the creator on offense, and so you just never know.
Well, no, but what I am curious about is he going to continue to play at the one wherever he comes? Let's say he comes off the bench, which I think is very likely. Which doesn't matter, but I think he played better at the one last year than he did because he's not a great shooter. So the one is maybe a better spot for him.
Yeah, but when you say the one, like, what's your definition of the one? Like, they brought the ball across half court, they made a pass, and the part of the offense, yes. But the part of the offense that he became the creator in was he got that ball screen on the left-hand side of the floor. He was dribbling with his right hand down the middle of the lane, and he made a bunch of those runners, and he made a bunch of lob passes and good plays to Kel'el Ware and Malik Renew. That doesn't make him a one, but he had the ball in his hands like you would expect a one to. Indiana played, I don't want to say positionless, because they had a 4 and a 5 guy on the floor most of the time last year, but everybody else was a 2 or a 3. I know Gabe Cupps played the one because just to fill a position. He didn't really accomplish a ton, and I'm a Gabe Cupps fan, but what he did last year is he would have been good back on my team back in 1990, but in 2024 he's going to need to produce a lot more than what he has been doing. So yeah, he was kind of a one, but other than that, once the ball came across half court, just because the play was being created by Trey Galloway, I don't think makes him the one. And I think they're going to have a bunch of creators on offense this year. I just hope they have someone. It's so much easier to create. It's so much easier to score inside when you're spraying the ball to the outside and guys are able to knock down shots. That's what I think Luke Goody brings for you. And I will be more excited about the guys that they have signed if they can sign a Luke Goody, if they can sign someone else that we know can knock down shots. I'll feel better about the guys that we have, because I don't want to rely on who we've brought in right now to be our 3-point shooters. Hopefully they develop into it.
Well, because we don't know what you're really going to get right now from Kaden Carlisle. You don't know really what you're going to get from Miles Rice. You don't know what you're going to get from Ja'Kai Newton. It's a lot of new. You don't know what you're going to get from Bryson Tucker. So you've got to take all these unknowns and turn it into something. But at least they have clay to mold with.
Yeah, no question about it. Like the pieces they've added, I don't want to sound negative, because the pieces Indiana has added are awesome. That's great. Now they need to plug in some guys. You don't need the Dalton Connect of the world, but you've got to put some people on the floor that can knock down shots. It's that simple. It's not easy, but it's simple. And if they don't start putting some people out on the floor and make it easier for the creators that Indiana does have, then, we're going to run into the same struggles that we ran into last year.
We've got to take a break. The Todd Father is with us, brought to you by MyJumpShot.com. For those of you that have children, grade school, elementary school, junior high school, college, doesn't matter. They need help on that jump shot, and there's no one better to do that than the Todd Father, Todd Leary, and Andy Moore Honda. We'll be back with more right after this. Boy, this could be worse. But
works out fine. Like,
the drive-through. I can hear the drive-through.
I hear the fry. I hear the fries
You want
beeping occasionally.
You want a large fry with that? Somebody. I'm surprised somebody had said, "Hey, Jim, is that his day job?"
Yep.
Oh man, where are you headed?
Down in Kentucky, Madisonville. Your area.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Oh, Kylie.
Where's she at now?
Ole Miss, Oxford, Mississippi.
Sweet. Cool. You need me anymore?
If you could.
I need. Do you care if I do it while I'm driving?
Oh, nope. and if we lose you, don't worry about it. I'll fill in.
All right. Cool.
There you go. There's your new slogan.
What's that?
I said, there's your new slogan. I'm going to alter a little bit. I'll give you a jumper. You can't refuse. I did get here's a good comment. Jim is loving this morning. I know I saw and there was one earlier. You need a break today, I think it said.
People are clever today.
Here we go. The Shot Father.
Oh,
that's another one. Yeah. How about that? The Shot Father. That's not bad.
It's not bad. People are creative.
I'm telling you, quick too, man. They're just busting those up. Well, Russell, I disagree because you don't know what it's going to be like together.
What do you say?
You should know have an idea what you're getting with already Power 5 experience. I mean, somewhat, but not to the degree.
30 seconds. On in 5.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio on this Thursday that seems to be Saturday, but it's really Friday. It's just been a wacky day here at Indiana Sports Beat Radio as I thought it was Saturday and was on my way to an AAU basketball game when I was alerted that there are people waiting to do the show. And I'm like, oh, my goodness. But we appreciate everybody for joining us. The top father, Todd Leary, with us right now. We've been talking about the portal roster realignment. The Big Ten is going to be – we've known what the Big Ten was going to be like for the last couple of years for the most part because of Mount Edie. Now that's gone and it's up in the air. Indiana fans are going to be excited, of course, but Illinois, Brad Underwood always does a great job in the portal and having a team ready to go. Purdue has people coming back. I don't think that they're going to be as good as people think that they are, but we'll talk about that. But Ohio State, and then you don't know what Dusty May's going to get done at Michigan because he's out there working it as well. But it should be kind of open. Michigan State, I didn't even mention them. Ohio State with that great run that they made at the end of the season, they picked up Bradshaw from Kentucky. So it's going to be a wide open Big Ten next year. Plus, we get the teams from the West Coast: Oregon, Washington, USC, and UCLA.
Yeah, I mean the era of college basketball that we all have become used to and known is obviously gone and over. I keep saying that, thinking like I've talked to coaches at, I'll say 7 or 8, Big Ten and big time college basketball programs. And they all have said exactly the same thing without me asking the question. This is not sustainable. The place that college basketball is in with the portal, with guys being able to go all these different places every single season is not sustainable. Now, I think that the way it used to be is not ever going to come back, which is fine. I don't think it needed to be. I'm fine with the changes and adjustments. But the portal, when you talk about, we do kind of know more about Purdue. Even we know what they're not going to have for sure, but we know what they are going to have because they don't play in the portal as much as most other teams. Illinois, we have no idea. Like, you got no clue what they're going to end up being. Michigan State, I think you give Tom Izzo enough time to study how to work this portal. Obviously, he's got as much money as they need to from NIL standpoint. I think we should all probably be scared of what he's going to be able to accomplish in this era. But Indiana has done really well. I mean, you look at where Indiana ranks. I don't understand how in the world they say that Indiana has been number 1 in the portal ahead of Kansas. Like, that seems crazy to me when you look at what Kansas has. But I've also said all year long, I thought AJ Storr would be the Dalton Connect of next year in the portal, and he went to Kansas. So I'm obviously going to side with Kansas in this regard. But it's just different, Jim. And the players that Indiana has coming in, I think we should be excited about them. I think we should, be excited about what they could look like together. We have a lot more excitement than we had a month ago. That's for sure.
Oh, absolutely. And I didn't mention Rutgers either. I mean, they've got Steve Peichel, who does a great job. It's a great class coming in. I don't know what all he's gotten done in the portal, but he has some very, very good players coming in to work with.
Yeah, he's got a great freshman class. I mean, that Harper kid, that dude's just a winner. And the kid that they have, I think he was rated number 2 in the country behind Cooper Flagg. I mean, you can make an argument I think Cooper Flagg's amazing, but you can make an argument all day long. That dude's might be number 1. And he's that team's going to be good. Like, I heard out of the mouth of a Big Ten assistant coach in the last 2 weeks that they're not even recruiting high school kids. They're not even looking at high school kids. Like,
why would you?
Because everybody is trying to be good next year. Like, and everyone will tell you, like, freshmen take some time to develop. Well, the guys we're talking about, like the Cooper Flaggs of the world, they don't take time to develop. They're going to come in, plug and play right away. And that kid at Rutgers, I forget his name, but the kid who's he's good, and the Harper kid is good. Like, Rutgers is going to be good again. Last year they stunk, like they were not any good, but they're going to be good again next year.
Well, they were really good defensively, but they just didn't have much offense to go with that. So, and that's exactly what these guys that we're talking about brings. Ron Harper Jr.'s brother, I forget his first name right now. I feel bad, but this dude, I think he scored 30 in the Jordan Brand game. So he can light it up. So it's going to be fun to watch in the Big Ten. Someone asked a minute ago if Indiana's going to have a roster to, if they don't succeed, hold Woody accountable. Well, I don't see how you don't, because I know that they're spending a ton of money through NIL. Well, how bad does it suck for you to not have been in the NIL era?
Real bad. Yeah, that would have we would have made so much money just because of Bailey. Like, Bailey, it's we have a lot of people our age-ish that listen to the show, so they will understand. But young kids nowadays can't understand. If he's not a name that ends up being like, LeBron James or something in the NBA, you can't hardly imagine how popular he was in the state of Indiana. But our NIL money would have been outrageous because of Bailey, and that's not to take anything away from Calvert and those. But Bailey's popularity was next level. I mean, it was Steve Alford and Damon Bailey-ish level that only those two guys got to. So, yeah, it would have been crazy. We'd have made a lot of money.
Well, and on top of that, where Indiana basketball was at that moment. Well, normally we wouldn't be doing that anyway. But but where the program was at too, we're talking Final Fours and competing for national championships against the very best, and that makes a huge difference when you're on that stage, which you guys were every year.
Yeah, it does. I mean, there's no doubt about it. Indiana, if you can make arguments for who are the Blue Bloods, and the Blue Bloods doesn't have to be Blue Bloods, but the real definition of Blue Blood, or how you want to be able to define it, is the backing for your program. And Indiana is a Blue Blood program from an NIL money standpoint. And so if you don't want to put them in there because of what they have accomplished in the last 20 years, then look at it from the standpoint of what they have to work with every year. And Indiana is one of the top programs in the country when it comes to support and financial support and what they can go get. And so I think it's awesome. The portal era is awesome for coaches from the standpoint of, you can be where Indiana was a month ago and have the success in the portal, and all of a sudden fans are insanely excited about what your season could be next year. All that can happen because of the portal. But I think it does bring some pressure to the coaching staff to produce with the money you're spending. It didn't used to be, it didn't used to be a money you're spending question for coaches. It was what can you get out of, what high school recruits you have coming in. And now it's not that way. Now it is, you can go bring in proven guys and plug them into your system. But you're going to pay them a lot of money, and you better be able to account for that. So I think the coaching staffs are the ones that have more pressure on them because of the portal, because now you're spending a lot of money. And you better be able to produce for it. Like, what if Kansas doesn't produce this year? Like, they're not going to continue to be able to get the support that they
normally get. Yeah. And that's the same way with Indiana. It has to happen because they have been pulling in those kind of NIL funds. Well, that well's not going to just keep pumping water out. If you just keep drawing on it without replenishing it back with success. And there's no doubt about that. So Indiana is going to have to be successful. Someone, like I said, asked the question earlier, is this going to be a roster that Mike Whitson is held accountable for? Of course, it has to be, because that was the whole conversation in the offseason coming into this season. But he has put together what is the makings of a pretty good squad, and we'll have to wait and see. Everybody, I know the fans get excited, but I sit back and wait. You gotta watch the team play. Last year, the fans thought the same thing, and they come into that early part of the season, and they're playing Morehead State, and they're playing Florida Gulf Coast and Army, and these teams, and they're barely winning. Beating Morehead State by one, these other teams by single digits. And not only that, they got buried in the metrics because of those early season problems. Then you get your butts handed to you by UConn and Kansas, or not Kansas, but Auburn, and you lose at home to Kansas. And then, so, man, you want to talk about just taking your foot and jumping on top of the metrics. That's what that did at that point. And it was almost nearly impossible for Indiana to climb out of that hole. That's something else they're going to have to pay attention to. the metrics. They're going to have to do things that help build that up. And I don't mean by you're playing games that with specific game plans that are metric oriented, but your accomplishments have to be moving the needle in the metrics. You have to be conscious of the metrics. You have to be conscious of what your team is doing to that in the categories that affect that. Are you letting teams stay close to you that should not be? Are you playing a 200 or 300 KenPom team and letting them stay in the game within the game of single digits? You can't do that. You've got to show who you are and that you are more successful. If not, you're not going to be viewed as being that much more successful, which is what happened to Indiana last year. Like I said, and it cost them a chance of being in the NCAA tournament, because that could have been very easily changed. Even with that horrible start, if they could have just managed to win some of the games that they probably should have won, they would have been able to get over that. But it didn't happen, so that's last season. I'm just saying you have to be conscious of it. You have to be knowledgeable of it. We've seen this staff this year be very, very conscious of the recruiting and the use of the portal. So obviously that was a lesson learned, and now they're hopefully that they're doing the same thing with metrics and all that go in to what it takes to now make the NCAA tournament, landing the right kinds of guys, putting a team together in all facets, not just having a big superstar. You have to have a complete team in place, and not just 5 guys. You need 10. And not the 10 guys are going to play necessarily, but you need that depth. You need that depth in the middle. If Ballo gets into foul trouble, I know you've got Renew, but you're going to have to move him over. We've got to take a quick break. We've got lots more coming up, including the man himself, Bob Kravitz from bobkravitz.com. Back with more Indiana Sports Beat Radio, brought to you by our good friends from the Ugly Grouper, located on Anna Maria Island, Florida. It is the place to be. Anna Maria Island, if you're already in the area, but if not, make sure you stop by. Let them know that we sent you. Great food, live music, craft beers and cocktails, freshly sourced seafood as well. Back with Bob Kravitz right after this.
How goes it?
Oh, it sucks, Robert.
Does it?
Well, I'm telling you the same story I've told like 5 times today, but I was good boy. I got up extra early this morning and took off to the Indiana Jam Fest AAU tournament.
Yeah.
At Avon. Unfortunately, today's not Saturday.
Oh, jeez.
Yes.
Oh, Jesus.
I'm in a McDonald's right now.
Oh, that is funny.
Yeah, someone called me and said, hey, there's a bunch of people in the stream waiting. Are y'all not doing a show today? And I'm like, why would I do a show today?
Oh, my God.
Oh,
you're unbelievable.
Oh, dude, it's too much work. I was all prepared for the show. I got all these great notes at home and stuff that I wanted to talk about. I'm worn out already, man. And these next 2 months are going to there's like one open weekend in May and June, I think.
Damn.
Or is it, yeah, or April, May, it's nuts.
Stop this. Stop. Okay.
You're not at home either, are you?
All right. Can you
You're
hear
not
me?
at home. Yeah, you're not at home either, are you?
And now I can't hear you at all. Shit. God damn it. I'm going to come back. Can you hear me? Okay, I can't hear you. Speak.
Hey, buddy, how are you?
No, I'm going to come back.
Oh boy, what a day it is, peeps. This is live radio at its best.
Still got about 45 seconds.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Tyler.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
All right, let me. I'm doing it on my phone. I'm at a coffee shop, and
I was going to say, you're not at home either, are you?
No, I'm at a coffee shop, and they don't have good internet, so I'm doing this on my phone.
You should have just come to McDonald's and join me.
Yeah, what McDonald's are you at?
I don't even know. I'm going to be honest. I'm somewhere between Plainfield and Martinsville.
Oh, Jesus.
Right, here we go. We got 5 seconds.
All right.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio here on this Friday. Thank you so much for being with us. A freaky Friday without question, but not because of our next guest, Bob Kravitz from bobkravitz.com, but just because of my wacky brain. But we appreciate you being with us. And hopefully I'm looking forward to Saturday, but it's just more work because I already thought today was Saturday. And so I've still got that to do tomorrow yet, and Sunday, basketball all weekend. But that's fine. Speaking of basketball, I know you had one of your pieces that out was before we get to the draft, but Caitlin Clark in Indianapolis and already at it, already on the practice floor and doing things like that. So it's happening.
It's happening. Training camp starts on Saturday. This poor woman, it's been a complete whirlwind for her and for all the draftees because they go through their season, the NCAA tournament, the whole bit. Then like 5 minutes later, they're in the draft. Then 5 minutes later, they're in training camp. And then 5 minutes later, they're starting their season. So, but she's apparently doing well. And Lord knows she's making a lot of money off of, the State Farms and Nikes and everybody else. So she's doing just fine.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that there's a lot of talk about the salary and I agree to the point of, I think the WNBA needs to adjust their rookie scale. I mean, you shouldn't be punishing your top players like that because they're getting punished pretty good in being limited.
They do that in the NBA. They do that. I mean,
I get that.
The money is higher in the NBA because the
NBA,
of
course it is. Makes more money.
Right. The NBA produces a ton more revenue than the WNBA. Now, in the years to come, with Caitlin, with Angel Reese, with Paige Beckers next year, maybe that changes. Maybe the day comes. I mean, think about this. Caitlin Clark has been taking charters everywhere she goes at the University of Iowa. Now she's going to be flying commercial. And she's, I mean, that's a different deal. So she's going to have to get used to that. But look, the WNBA is still a relatively young league. And, people say it's unfair that she's not. Look, she's making millions on Nike, State Farm.
It was like 24 million with Nike.
28.
What's 4 million here or there?
Yeah, exactly. That hasn't made any difference in my lifestyle. But no, I think that the impact that she's going to have is that salaries will go up across the board. Travel will improve. But this is what you get when you've got a league that's only 25 years old. Look at where the NBA was after just 25 years. You and I are both, I'm old enough to remember when NBA games back in the 70s were shown on tape delay. And NBA Finals series were shown on tape delay. Everything changed with Magic and Bird. And, the hope is that Caitlin Clark can be Magic or Bird or both.
Yeah, and that's a lot to ask for. But
she's
to whom much is given,
ability.
much is required.
Exactly, and she doesn't seem to be thrown off by the expectations. I mean, she'll fulfill most of the expectations. That's my feeling, and they're gaudy expectations, but I think she's the right person for the job.
Yeah, and she doesn't have a bad running mate there. Elia Boston. The Fever, man, they've kind of struck it rich with kind of gold with these players that they've landed.
Well, that's what happens when you suck for 8 years. I mean, they have been not only bad for 8 years, but they've been inept. I mean, you look at all the high draft picks that they've gotten over the last couple of years, and so many of them have been out the door within a year or two. They just haven't panned out. But, you look at other teams that go back to back with number one picks, like the Seattle Storm. I think they had Sue Bird and Lauren Jackson, and they won multiple championships. So if you look at the history of the WNBA, which I'm starting to now, you find out that when you go back to back number one, you tend to win championships at some point.
Absolutely, and it should be fun. It'll be fun for the city of Indianapolis because you've got the Colts, you've got the Pacers who are in the playoffs. Now you've got, not only do you have the Fever who aren't great yet, but they have the biggest name in the WNBA right now, and she's not alone. So it's an easier ticket for a lot of people as well to manage.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. No, it's a different crowd, which is cool. It's a lot more kids. I mean, kids are absolutely, loving having Caitlin Clark here. I think Aaliyah Boston's got a great personality and a great game. She's not going to be as big as Caitlin, because of Caitlin's history in college and breaking all those records. But they're going to be somebody that we have to pay attention to, and I think that's a great thing.
Absolutely. The NFL draft, of course, began last night. The Colts with the 15th pick. Before we get to that, the 8th pick was Michael Penix Jr. from Washington, formerly of Indiana, who was a little bit of a surprise to some people going that high, but it was definitely a surprise to Kirk Cousins. Apparently he was shocked for his agent, and I'm like, "Ooh, that's never a good thing."
This reminds me of my days in Denver when the Broncos had a healthy, productive John Elway, and Dan Reeves decided to draft Tommy Maddox.
Who?
and we're like a quarterback, and we're like, what in the hell? What Atlanta did made no sense. Now, grabbing Penix alone would have made sense, but you just gave Kirk Cousins $100 million guaranteed, and then Fontenot, their GM, says, "Well, it's not the worst thing if Penix sits on the bench for 4 or 5 years." What? 4 or 5 years? I mean, maybe a year. Maybe 2. You can't ask a player to sit on a bench for 5 years while Kirk Cousins is playing out the string. That's absurd. I don't know what the Atlanta Falcons are doing, and I'm watching Bill Belichick on the McAfee thing last night, and I'm thinking he must be thinking to himself, I dodged a bullet by not going to Atlanta because those people don't know what in the hell they're doing.
Yeah, it's almost reminiscent to the Packers. I know that there's been a lot of mentions of that situation where you've got an all-star still in Aaron Rodgers, and then they take Jordan Love, and then that ended kind of way it did with Brett Favre. Brett Favre, he wasn't happy about it, and he got out of there. But it's a business. It's at the end of the day, it's still a business. but you have to run it in the way to be successful.
Right. But I liked, before you even asked, I liked the Colts pick. I agree with Chris Ballard on this. You can never have
I couldn't believe it.
pass rushers. You can never have enough elite pass rushers. And, you know, for those of us who've lived in Indianapolis for many years, we remember what it was like when they had Freeney and Mathis. And you put this guy on a line with Dio Odengbo, Samson Ebicam, and of course DeForest Buckner, Grover Stewart. Ballard said it last night, and again, I agree with him. This is the best defensive front the Colts have had. Now they had more, they had greater needs. You know, they need a cornerback, they need a tight end, they need a wide receiver. But if you think this guy is a game changer, I'll never argue with you when you go get yourself a pass rusher, especially in a league that is so offensive oriented, where the first 14 draft choices are all offensive players. The only issue, of course, is his health, and those doctors better be right about clearing him, because one more neck surgery and he may go the route of Leighton Vander Esch of Dallas, who was a rookie Pro Bowler and then started getting hurt and rarely played his last couple of years.
Lots of action going on in the portal, of course.
You know how much I love talking about the portal.
I should have. I'm going to change it in currently in men's NCAA basketball free agency.
Yes, that's what it is.
Yeah, exactly what it is. Well, yeah, it's a seller's market for certain. We just had Todd Leary on with us a minute ago, and I said, man, how much does it suck for you not to have been able to play in the NIL era, especially the team he was on in the era and where they were? I mean, they were elite. They were in Final Fours. They were stars.
Yeah, they were. Yeah, How about Todd Leary now? I mean, how much would they pay a dead-eye outside shooter right now?
Ooh.
Whatever he wants. Name your price, buddy.
Yeah, I make this point, which I don't know if I've said it to you. 5 of Indiana's top 11 all-time three-point shooters came off of that roster.
Wow, that's amazing.
It is. I mean, I'm like, I was looking at that one day. I'm like, wait, whoa, hold on. I'm like, are you kidding me? 5 guys of their top all-time 11 still off of one roster. That is amazing. And that you could have never kept that team together today.
Oh, you can't. Yeah. I mean, college sports, I just think we have to grin and bear it, And the fact of the matter is, at certain schools, kids are getting $1,000 handshakes. Let's not act like this stuff hasn't been going on forever. It was just under the table. Now it's above board, above the table, whatever, on the table, in the table, and we just have to get used to it. You change or you perish.
Absolutely. Indiana is trying to do that. Purdue is not. We'll talk about both of those because it is 2 very different directions. But I think that Matt Painter, like Mike Woodson, learned he's got to do it differently than he did last year. Painter is seeing, he sees the writing on the wall that bringing in 6 freshmen, that's not going to work in the future.
Ask John Calipari.
Oh, and those guys were all elite.
They're all 5 stars.
Yeah, and these are not 5 stars that are coming in. And I'm not knocking them, but there's a huge difference between guys you think you're going to get something out of maybe the second year or whatever. Right. That's old school thinking.
Right. It's a year-to-year proposition. It's no longer about getting old and staying old. I mean, it worked in Purdue's case, I guess, but what you need is you need the studs out of the portal or out of high school. You need a couple of guys to fill in from the portal, unless you're Indiana, and then your whole team is the portal pretty much. And I think that where Calipari got in trouble was he had all these great young players, but he didn't surround them with experienced players out of the portal, and I think that was his downfall ultimately in Kentucky.
Well, yeah, he did it for a dozen years. I mean,
Right.
going all the way back to he won one national title during this time, but he had the number one recruiting class like 11 out of 12 years or whatever it was. And I don't want to say nothing to show for it because they won a national championship and went to a couple of Final Fours, but that's like Purdue did not have a chance of beating UConn, in my opinion. I mean, that was I talked about the fact that the last, now with the UConn's title this year, the last 6 national champions have had a minimum, every one of them, of 4 NBA draft picks on their team.
Right.
But they weren't. None of them were all freshmen.
Right. Exactly.
They were a mix.
Well, and college basketball has gotten older, especially, two elements. You got NIL, which is keeping guys in college longer, and you've got the COVID year. So you've got a bunch of 23, 24-year-olds hanging around and continuing to play, and God bless them. They deserve it, but the college basketball has gotten older in the last couple of years because of those things.
Absolutely. What's up next for you? We got a lot of stuff coming up. I mean, the portal's got to finalize itself as it's about to close coming up, but that doesn't mean that you still have all of the people that are in it that have to settle out. I mentioned Purdue a minute ago. They've got 6 freshmen coming in, and I've had some people argue with me on the comments, Purdue fans, which think that Ethan Morton and Mason Gillis, I said they were in essence run off, and that maybe that sounds harsher, but it doesn't matter. It's in essence the case. Matt Painter did not have a plan for those guys being on the roster next season.
Right.
And he has the recruiting class he has, and those guys had to leave, which is kind of unusual because you're normally not going to run off a Mason Gillis, who was one of the best 3-point shooters on their team.
Yeah,
on a 40% shooting team.
That surprises me, Jim. I mean, certainly Ethan Morton, I could understand completely. There are kids screaming and yelling at my coffee shop. It's very off-putting. But yeah, Mason Gillis really surprised me. I thought that he would be a guy who would be a centerpiece for next year's team, but apparently they felt like the math didn't work.
Yeah, and you don't end up at Duke by being a so-so player, even though Duke,
exactly, he's a perfect Dookie.
And even though now Duke is also, reality has slapped Duke in the face now.
Yeah,
7 guys into the portal.
Isn't that something? It's a whole new world, brother.
Yeah, it's something. So we've got a lot coming up here in the next month. I know you won't do much to cover the Derby, but we've got the Kentucky Derby. I've got AAU basketball this weekend, but next weekend is the Kentucky Derby, and then basically Indy the month of May, Indy week or Indy 500 coming up at the end of that month, but lots of stuff going on in between as well. The Hubers event comes up next month for Indiana fans. I think that's on the 29th, a Wednesday. So there is a ton of things coming up. The fallout from the draft, of course. I know you're following for the Colts.
Yes, I'll have a column on the Colts draft here within the next hour, as soon as I can find internet that works properly, which it doesn't at this particular coffee shop. And I'll be going to the Pacers playoff game 3 tonight at 5:30. I'll have a column later tonight.
Perfect. Make sure you are following Bob Kravitz at bobkravitz.com. Keep up on all things sports in the state of Indiana and more. Appreciate you, my brother.
Thank you, buddy.
You have a good one. Enjoy your coffee. We've got more coming up here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio, brought to you by our good friend Cheryl Sizemore, Remax Realty. For those in the market for a home in the Indianapolis area, you need Cheryl and her 2 decades of experience. It could be the difference between getting the home you want or not. We're back with more Indiana Sports Beat Radio right after this. Man, this has been somewhat brutal. Holy moly.
So will you just finish up now till the 2-hour mark? Is that what you'll do?
Yeah, 156. So where are we tonight? Oh, good. We don't have that much time. That's perfect. 10 minutes. Be less than 10 minutes.
Yep.
I may pull you in and chat a little bit.
Yep. Could talk some Pacers if you want. Game 3 tonight.
Yes.
One more minute.
Well, at least I'll get me some McDonald's after this, I guess.
I was going to say, you've earned yourself a McFlurry or Mick whatever.
Well, I'm hungry. I can promise you that.
All right, 10 seconds. 5.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio on this Freaky Friday. I appreciate you guys being with us. Had fun already today, though, with plenty of guests on. Zach Osterman from the Indy Star was with us. We had the Todd father, Todd Leary, Bob Kravitz as well, talking about a myriad of things. Of course, lots going on with the portal. You've got the NFL draft that began last night. Of course, Caleb Williams, USC quarterback, going first to the Chicago Bears. For I know there's a lot of Bears fans out there, plus everybody listening on the WJLB, the voice of the region up there. I'm sure they were. I think that everybody seemed to like that pick a lot, and we'll find out. So, yeah, John, it is too late for that. We're on a different menu now. So there we go. I should be taking orders. That's what I should be doing. Or I can get a side job here while I'm here. But yeah, Mike Shenanigans, that's where I'm going right there, babe. That's the old That's the old standby. Don't have to say what it is, but absolutely. It has been a fun week, but we're not done. I know Tyler, who is with us today, has a story up that went up 2 days ago in regard where he talked to Trent Sisley, who had visits this week from everybody except for me. Matt Painter was in on Monday to see him down at Lincoln City Heritage High School, and on Tuesday it was Mike Woodson and the entire Indiana staff, as you saw the picture that up with the story, if you haven't read that. Then on Wednesday, Michael Shrewsbury was in from Notre Dame, and then on Thursday he posted that he had just received an offer from the University of Louisville and new coach Pat Kelsey there, which he has to do that. He reach out, but that is Johnny come lately, and they're way too late to get into that fight. Maybe if this was early on, they might have a fighting chance just because of the location. There would be the closest school out of all of those schools, actually closer than Bloomington from Lincoln City down there around Santa Claus Land. But he's going to play his basketball in Indiana. I feel without question inside the state of Indiana. I mean, so whether that means Indiana or Purdue or even Notre Dame, Matt Painter has recruited him hard. He's recruited him harder than anybody else. That I can tell you for a fact. He has put in all of the effort that you can. I know he has seen him on so many double-digit times, and that includes going to games and whatnot. But he has double-digit visits, and Indiana is not close to that, maybe half. But we'll see. I think that what like right now helps for his recruiting without question, because these guys see that they can put this together in the offseason. If they need to fill the holes, they can and will fill the holes. So that has to be very reassuring. I talked about earlier that had there been a sign of this, maybe Liam McNeely doesn't decommit, but maybe that turns out to be a good thing. Who knows? I don't know. I don't know how that would have worked out, and we will never know. We'll see him on a different team, but that doesn't mean it would have been the same, because all things are not the same. So we'll find out, but I think that is definitely going to help with this recruiting class of Jalen Harrelson and Braylon Mullins and Trent Sisley. That is a core trio for the state of Indiana. I'm not sure Indiana can land all three of those guys, but man, if they could, that would be a great recruiting class, because you're going to have Trent Sisley, who will be able to play at a higher level than I think people think. But I also think that he is going to be around for longer than either of the other two, partly because I think Jalen Harrelson, his talent is it's way up there. So he's a potential NBA player. Great size at 6'7", can play the point. You don't see that very often. Braylon Mullins, he's a unique dude too. He can shoot the ball. He can get up. He has a great skill set, keeping him in place, keeping the players in place, re-recruiting them. But Indiana is in a position now to where they can get out of the funk that they have been in. Talked about Purdue. It's going to be interesting to see how that works out for them. I think Purdue, without question, finishes in the top 5 in the Big Ten next year, but I think they're outside of the top 3. I just don't think that you can bring in 6 freshmen now and compete. And I know Purdue fans say that, well, we've got 3 starters back, and they're talking about Braden Smith and Fletcher Lawyer and Trey Kaufman-Wren, who are all solid players, but also you saw in the national championship game, good defense will shut them down. They were the leading 3-point shooting team in the country this year, but UConn held them to 7 attempts. I mean, you would think that you can run around and throw it up a few times, but That's athleticism, and that's a difference maker. And so it does matter, and therefore I don't think that I just don't think that they're going to be in the top three. I'm not saying that they're going to fall off the planet. They should probably make the NCAA tournament. How's Will Berg gonna be? The replacement for Mount Edie. Mount Edie was a mountain, an immovable object. That is not going to be the case with Will Berg. But it'll be interesting and it'll be fun. And I think that the rivalry will be fun. The league will be fun. So it should be a great time. We are about out of time. Speaking of that, it has been a great week. Make sure you go to thehoosier.com for that story on Trent Sisley, and go to ISB Radio's YouTube right here over the weekend for updates from me on the Indiana Jam Fest that will be going on. Those guys that all aforementioned will be playing, not except for Harrelson. Malachi Moreno, also a part of that group, the 7-footer from down in Kentucky. So we'll have stuff up there, as well as will Tyler Smith on thehoosier.com. Big thanks to Bob Kravitz, to Todd Leary, and of course to Zach Osterman, Tyler Smith for sitting in today for John, the producer, who is on assignment. And most importantly, thanks to you guys for sticking with us through this wacky Friday that now I finally know what day it is. But appreciate you guys so much. Looking forward to seeing you again soon. Until then, I'm Jim Coyle. I will see you on the radio.